Aye.
We have 3 ayes. Any abstentions?
Right here, I abstain.
And I see that Councillor Bullock has joined us. We're welcome. We're just voting on approving the minutes. You're allowed to abstain if you weren't there last, but you were anyway.
I was there. I approve.
Okay. Any nays? Okay, the minutes are approved. No public hearings, no motions before us. A little background, some of you may have heard, we had we thought we were going to hear from Bruce Nicholson, the engineer who was most closely involved in the Lund cleanup. He told us today that he couldn't make it. And that I'm working with a paper copy of the agenda, which still had that as the second item. I'm going to use my prerogative to make it the first item because I think we can dispense of it quickly, and we'll get to the Berkshire Gas business later. I just wanted to take a chance because I thought it was useful to replay for anybody who wasn't here the 4 minutes of last month's meeting, which I clipped out, and I'm hoping to play now. Does anybody, oh, here we go, share. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Oh, yes.
Yes.
Okay, and now let's see if I can play this full screen. This is the location we're talking about, the former Lund Silversmith property. These are the buildings. Some of them have been torn down. I can make it a little bigger. Might be helpful. These are the sampling sites, monitoring wells and indoor air sampling sites. As you can see, a lot of sampling was done. I found most interesting is this. The pink is the area limit of method 1 exceedance in groundwater. This is where I thought this is where the groundwater is affected. Houses, and we actually have readings over time for many of these sites. Try to bring this up. TCE, trichloroethylene, is always the biggest problem. As I understand the chemistry, it binds to organic molecules like the mulch in soil. The soil off gases carries TCEs with it. Now, what's important here is green versus the white. You can see the dates of the reading: 7/21/16, 8/19/16, 3, then 2017. After the green area are the readings after a passive system was put in place. Correct me if I'm wrong, Director Warner, but my understanding was it was a gravel layer with permeable over it. So the idea was that would prevent the off-gassing of TCEs. And you can see that the levels are 4 point. An important factor here is that the levels that are allowed by the EPA for residential indoor air, 0.4, and for commercial indoor air, it's 1.8. And before this layer was put on, we had readings like 4.7, which is way over the commercial limit. Afterwards, I believe what happened is it got down below the allowable commercial or industrial use, but it's still above the residential use, which is important because the question of whether this is considered commercial property or residential is a legal distinction that is relevant and what's that word, important. And I believe the city's position is because this is treatment facility, it falls into the category of commercial. So that this is what Director Hoffman was talking about. These are acceptable levels for a commercial operation. This helped me to see in understanding what's going on. So I stopped sharing. Is there something else you wanted to show?
Question
Yes.
about this. So the very
I'm going to stop there and stop sharing the screen if I can figure out how to do it.
You're on mute.
Yeah. I know that some of you had questions that Councillor Bullock had questions that you didn't get to ask last month. So before we move on to Berkshire Gas, anybody have any comments or questions that they're burning to say? Let's raise your hand.
About Lund.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I have some concerns about how that property is being treated. There's a treatment center on site, and for all intents and purposes, it's whether it's 30 days or 90 days, it should be considered a residential or a mixed use, not just commercial.
Well, should, if I could interrupt you, should is a funny word there, because what should happen and what is legally happening may be two different things. I think I have to limit this to counselors at this point. I see the other people with questions. But I hear you, Doug. I think that is the crux of it. Councillor Bullock, did you have a question you wanted to ask last month that didn't get to?
I did have a question, but I was able to dive deeper into the materials, and so I think my question that I had was answered. Thank you, though.
Okay. I did have some of you may have talked to Rafe Pellegrino. He says I can call him Reefer, I think. I think that's what he said. Their position, well, there was a solution offered last month that seemed very attractive, putting fans on the passive system, turning it into an active system, and perhaps more effectively clearing out whatever TCEs remain. He understandably doesn't want to do anything that he isn't forced to do by the EPA, and I think next week's meeting may be a chance for us to persuade him that maybe doing the right thing. I'm going to try to stay neutral in this. I was hoping, we had a lot from one side last month. I was hoping to hear from the other side today. That's going to have to wait till next week's meeting. If there,
Yes, Councilor.
Councilor Distorger, yes.
Yes, Councilor Elmer, I have several comments.
Okay.
But I don't want to, I want to allow all of my fellow councilors to go first if they have anything else to say. Is there anybody else that wants to speak first in our group of five here? Okay.
I think
Okay, so I just wanted to, there was something that was said last week, and it concerns the EPA. The remediation process is overseen by, Bruce Nicholson, up until 5 minutes ago, I thought that he was coming, so I had prepared heartily for that, and I'm just being made aware of that now. But at any rate, the remediation process is overseen by professionals like Mr. Nicholson. It has been apparent listening to various committees and individuals that this may not be clearly understood. The DEP reviews submissions and is depending on the veracity or truthfulness of the same. In other words, the care of any hazardous waste site in Massachusetts depends on the accuracy and the truthfulness of the data that is submitted by the LSP to the EPA. And I could tell by listening to several of the comments last week. And I am going to go on because I have a couple of more things, and I understand that Mr. Nicholson is not here. If I just could, may
Sure.
I, with the permission of my fellow counselors? Okay.
Please.
Okay. All right. Considering the significant concentration and rise in TCE in several of the monitoring wells and catch basins on Conwood Street, can you explain why further testing of down gradient properties has never been repeated since 2014? This was for Mr. Nicholson. This is very important because it concerns the Board of Health. In April 29th of 2016, in written correspondence, the LSP OTO notified the mayor, the Board of Health, and the Mass Department of the DEP of their plan to install the SSDS and thoroughly test the air quality of the Franklin Recovery Center prior to occupancy. My question to him, which I know was not done, did you ever notify our Board of Health or the DEP that you were opening a residential treatment facility prior to doing the safety testing that you had outlined and that is required per the Massachusetts Contingency Plan Vapor Intrusions Guidelines? I also wanted to know who authorized the opening of the Franklin Recovery Center in early July of 2016, and who made the decision to fill the beds prior to the required testing. You, Councilor Elmer, put up a graph that showed exactly what they can do. And I think just to clarify for the community members who are listening, I know that this is my last statement. I'm not going to go through all my questions. I know that averaging the readings is legal. But doesn't that mean, in fact, that some areas of the building have readings well over the industrial limit? In fact, one area in that building has never been in the safe industrial range. And where this is a public meeting, the PIP process, we may not have the media, we may not have all of the people in attendance. I just wanted to call that out to our members who took the time to sign in tonight thinking that the scientific expert was going to be present. That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Disorder. I'm bitterly disappointed that he didn't show. I fear that my questions may have felt like we were setting him up. So anyway, perhaps it's my fault. Are there any other questions on the Lund property for tonight? Then seeing none, let's move on to the gas moratorium. And I'm going to hand it over to Councilor Healy, whose idea it was and who's got a bunch of questions for our guests. Maybe we should first introduce them. We have Chris Farrell and remind me, Gabe Joseph. Thank you. Okay, Derek, take it away.
First, I'd like to thank Chris and Gabe for taking the time to meet with us tonight. Obviously, we have a lot of questions. It's been, almost 8 long years since the moratorium's been in effect, and for us economically, it has affected us, right? Businesses want gas. It's one of the cheapest ways to heat, process-related gas for industrial use. I know that the pipeline, was shot down, and that had some cause because you were relying on that for additional gas flow. But, there are alternate measures out there. So did you guys, Chris and Gabe, did you get a chance to review my questions prior to the meeting or?
I didn't receive your questions.
Okay.
Who,
All right.
who was that?
Chris
Chris?
Farrell. Yeah.
Oh, I sent them to you. All right. Well, you'll get them fresh.
All right. That's all right.
Well, I will definitely take it easy and, try to give you as much time to answer the questions. And if there's anything you're not comfortable answering this time around, I'd say this is definitely going to be more than one meeting, in my opinion. Just because it is important to the town or city of Greenfield and important to a lot of residents in Greenfield, right? And I'm sure you understand that. You're in the business of selling gas. It must hurt you just as much as us, right? So question number one was just data collected from the Berkshire Gas website, right? About two options being studied for lifting the moratorium. Option one was a new distribution main, and option two was a new liquefied natural gas facility. Now, I read that online, which is great, right? But a couple questions came to my mind when I did read that. One of them would be, would Berkshire Gas be willing to share this data with the council? So you said you performed the research, you did the cost estimates that was ranging through $100 million to do these. That the rate of increase would be too much for your current gas users, right? So I was just wondering if you'd be willing to share that data with the council so we could somewhat review it, see the detailed cost estimate that you did, the different options that you did, when they took place.
Let me address that.
Sure.
Right out of the gate. We
Who's
retained
speaking?
Chris Farrell.
Okay.
We retained a world-leading consulting firm, Concentric, to perform that study.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's anything proprietary in there. My guess is there probably is not. And if in fact that is confirmed for me, I don't think we would have a problem sharing that.
Sure.
It's a very complex study. The range of options that they had developed, it wasn't just cost, it was also feasibility of permitting. And with the opposition to natural gas in the marketplace today, it was also assessed that permitting would not be possible. But the cost component, ranged anywhere from 70 to 100 million, and that was in 2018. So those dollars would be substantially higher today. And just for the purposes of contrasting that, the entire value of the company is just under $100 million in terms of plant that we have in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So the thought of spending the value of the company a second time just to fund what would be incremental growth in the Franklin, Hampshire County area obviously doesn't make any economic sense. And not only do we recognize that, but the regulators would as well, and they would never approve it. But so let me answer. The answer is, let me confirm that there is no proprietary. And if there isn't, maybe we can look to sharing that.
Sure. And if there is proprietary information, I would recommend maybe you could have your legal counsel go through it, or whoever reviews your documentation, and just black mark out the areas that you don't want us to see, right?
Yeah, our general counsel,
redact it.
Our general counsel will handle this whole question for me. So
sure, totally understandable.
Yeah.
But
you're right. I mean, we're a for-profit company.
Yep.
We make no money when we have to say no.
Mm-hmm.
If there was any feasible way that we could be providing additional gas service in what we refer to as our Eastern Division today, believe me, we would be doing it.
Okay, so I guess that was another one, led to one of my other questions, right? So, and this is all part of question 1 out of 4, right? So the next question was the average rate increase for current consumers if the project was done, right? So obviously you have X amount of consumers that buy gas right now, right? The project would be estimated at X amount of dollars, and you make X amount of dollars. And everybody knows when you own a business, because I run a business, right? When you own a business, sometimes it takes investment that has a rate of return or return of investment, right? So that kind of was like, okay, so what would the average upcharge per gas user be, right? And then on the Berkshire Gas side, you obviously bring in the revenue, right? if you had to do this over a 10-year period and there was a rate of return, what would that be? Do you have any financial data that shows how negative it is, right? So
I don't have that. I don't have that off the top of my head, but let's just do some back of the napkin math. If we spend $100 million doubling our plant and had to recover that from 40,000 customers over the course of 10 years,
mhm.
it's not at all realistic. Not only would we be unable to do that from a regulatory perspective, they would never approve it. But the cost of natural gas at that time would become so prohibitive that not only would we not be fueling new growth, but I'm sure existing customers would go to an alternative fuel source as well. And as that outward migration occurred, every remaining customer's bill would go up.
Could I interrupt?
Sure.
I think what we're trying to get to is what would it take to lift the moratorium in Greenfield?
Yeah, we pretty much announced in 2018 that for economic and business reasons, the moratorium was permanent. I mean, we're not the only area that has a permanent moratorium, and there's several areas in New York State that have permanent moratoriums. And as pipeline capacity is being fully subscribed, you'll see more and more moratoriums, more and more natural gas moratoriums going forward. But they're just essentially the facility, the line that serves our Eastern Division is at full capacity.
Mhm.
And we can't add anything to it. The risk that you run by oversubscribing your system, it would be to lose service altogether at the period of peak demand, typically on the coldest day. Now, if that were to occur, and this is why a distribution company doesn't do this, if that were to occur, we have approximately, I'm going to ballpark it, 10,000 customers in our Eastern Division. And if we lost the system on the coldest day of the year, that would require that we make a visit to each one of those 10,000 locations and shut off all of their gas appliances so that we wouldn't be feeding natural gas into their residents when we reestablish service. Mm-hmm. And then we would hopefully be able to reestablish service, and we'd have to visit all 10,000 locations a second time to relight pilot lights. I mean, just to think of what would have happened over the course of the days that it took to do that at the coldest time of the year is just not practical.
I hope you don't think we're asking you to put the town's gas supply in danger or to engage in a building project that doesn't make economic sense. I think it's fair to say that the message that Greenfield got when you made the moratorium permanent is that the town was being punished. I wasn't here for it. This is what I hear. And so it makes, I guess, we don't have access. What Councilor Healy's getting to is we just have to take your word for it about your capacity and whether really the moratorium is justified by the number of square meters of gas, or
but that's not necessarily the case, Mr. Chairman. You don't have to take our word for it. First of all, we neither have the power, the interest, nor the desire, nor are we in any position to punish anyone for anything. So no, trust me, we're not being punished. Remember, we answer to our shareholders, and they fully expect that if we can sell gas, that we will sell gas, and if we could, we would. But we have also, over the course of invoking the moratorium, had to submit all of this documentary data and evidence to the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities. So they are our overlords, as it were, and it's their word that you need to be taking if you prefer not to take our word.
Yeah. Okay. Good point. But speaking of shareholders, are there shareholders in Berkshire Gas?
Oh, sure. I mean, not specifically in Berkshire Gas, but in our parent company, Avangrid. Absolutely.
Who is your parent company?
Avangrid, and the ultimate parent is Iberdrola of Spain.
Yeah.
This is a Spanish multinational. Are they setting the policy, or is Berkshire Gas setting the policy?
Well, it's regulatory policy and just sound business sense that, you know, I mean, Iberdrola would look at the same numbers we're looking at and draw the same conclusions. But no, Iberdrola is not involved in day-to-day management of Berkshire Gas, and nor are they involved in the day-to-day management of Avangrid.
Counselor Disorder has her hand up.
Yes, I have a question. So the customers in Eastern Massachusetts, closer to Boston, if a new restaurant was opening up there, there would be no gas for them either?
Counselor, that's not necessarily the case, and let me explain the difference.
Okay.
Eastern Massachusetts is served by several different interstate natural gas pipelines that offer them, you know, varying degrees of capacity and product. Berkshire Gas is served simply by the Tennessee gas pipeline. We don't have a secondary source of supply. And that line runs across the southern part of Massachusetts. We interconnect with it in Southwick. And then we have a distribution line that runs from Southwick and then dead ends in Greenfield. So there's no backfeed, there's no secondary source of supply. That's why when the NED project was viable, that's why we wanted the NED project, because it would provide us additional capacity. It would interconnect with our system somewhere in Franklin County and would have provided us growth margins, you know, for the foreseeable future. When that option foreclosed itself, and there's no reason really to believe in the industry that additional natural gas pipelines will ever be built in Massachusetts, then it pretty much set our fate. Then the numbers are what the numbers are, and we had to assess what the limits of growth were. And when we announced the moratorium in 2014, we truly had arrived at the limits of growth.
Follow up, if I may, Counselor Elmer.
Go ahead, Counselor Disorder.
So new growth then in, so let's just talk about Western Mass. A new restaurant in Springfield, Pittsfield, maybe Chicopee. Are they allowed?
Again,
I understand that. I understood exactly what you said about that there are different entities that are in charge of that. But I just want to know, for our neighboring competitive cities like Northampton, can new businesses open there?
We don't serve Northampton. We don't serve Springfield. We don't serve Chicopee.
Okay.
I know when Columbia Gas served them, there was a moratorium in a number of the communities that they served, including Northampton and East Hampton. I don't know, now that they're owned by Eversource, what their current circumstance is, but I know that because they had capacity issues, that there were limitations as well. In terms of Pittsfield, the Berkshire County service area is actually fed from a different pipeline. And there is additional capacity available on that pipeline now because Berkshire County hasn't seen the kind of growth that Franklin County saw. But it is not beyond the realm of possibility that at some point that distribution system, because it is also a dead end lateral line, will also reach its capacity.
So follow up, if I may, Counselor Elmer.
Sure.
Might we be better off with another supplier?
Well, again, that's
was the counselor. Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Were you addressing that to me, Counselor?
Yes. Go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, natural gas utilities. Only one natural gas utility serves any particular jurisdiction per the franchises granted to it by the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities. That's why you don't see two natural gas distribution companies in any one community.
So it's a government mandated monopoly, basically.
Very similar to the electric utility, yeah.
And we love them. Can I get some guidance on procedure here? Victor Moscello has raised his hands a couple times. Am I allowed to call on him?
Counselor Elmer, if I may, I
Yes.
believe that that is up to the discretion of the chair. If you wish to allow the participation of one, I know that the president of the council was on, but if you wish to allow involvement by others, then certainly we should be allowing other citizens for whatever, however they want to speak, to allow that. But I have no problem with this person speaking as long as anyone on any topic is allowed to speak.
So if we let Victor in, we've opened up Pandora's box, and everybody can say something.
I believe
I'm
that's
going
the
to
case.
use. I'm
Yeah,
going to use
Phil,
my discretion.
this is Sheila Gilmore. If you
Yeah.
want to allow someone to speak, you're welcome to do that because you're the chair of this meeting. But if you allow one resident to speak, you have to allow everyone else to speak also, so that there's no, it doesn't look like we're being unfair.
Yeah, Victor, I'm sorry. I don't think I can do that. All right. So let me get this straight. You are governed by Massachusetts legislation that says only one gas provider per area. Correct?
Yeah, that's true with any publicly regulated utility.
Even if that local monopoly can't serve the area,
Given that there aren't any other interstate pipelines that would serve this area geographically other than the one that we're currently being served by, there's no one else that could come in and provide any additional service.
Councilor DeSauer, I sort of feel like I have to get back to Councilor Healy, who started his line of questioning.
Yes.
I'll get back to you.
Can you guys hear me okay? I'm having some computer problems down here and my screen disappeared.
Okay. Do you want me to let Councilor DeSauer?
No, I'm logging back in now, see if that helps.
I see you. I hear you.
Huh. Okay, now I'm back.
Okay.
Back
twice. You're gonna have to mute one of those.
Well, I don't have a screen, but I'm gonna go forward anyway. So, can everybody hear me okay? Because I have no video.
We hear and see you.
Okay, so I have 3 more questions if you'll allow me the time, everybody. So, the other question I had was in regards to would Berkshire Gas be willing to share historical data detailing consumption rates of current BG customers? Just the past 5 years of historic consumption.
We certainly couldn't do that on an individual basis because that would be in violation of the privacy requirements.
Yeah. I just mean overall usage, consumption. So
I don't know that an aggregate number. I don't know that we would have any reason why we wouldn't share that. I'm just not sure that it would be terribly relevant to you.
It actually, it would be relevant because, and that will come up in a separate question, right? But the reason I ask is, obviously gas consumption will change during peak demand, right? Like the winter. So we talked about the winter and having demand. So I said, what can be done to supplement gas during peak demand? And one of the questions would be the LNG facility, right? So that was one of the options you looked into, an LNG facility with vaporization units. This is something National Grid proposed as an option for the gas shortage in southern New York State. Their estimated cost to install this was $59 million, which was much less than $100 million. So again, it was just a question on what's preventing us from an LNG facility.
Can I try to translate that into English? You're talking about building a liquid natural gas depot that would be fed by truck?
Correct. Or rail. I mean, we have rail cars, right? In Deerfield, that go right by TrueCore. There's sites out there that would be perfect if you brought it in by rail, which would be more cost effective. So I was just wondering if, again, I guess we'll see those results in that study that you might share that's redacted, but is that what you looked into is the question?
Yeah, well, let me answer that a couple different ways. First of all,
Sure.
we already maintain and operate an LNG facility
Mhm.
in the town of Whately. Because our pipeline supplies are insufficient during the winter months, and we have to use the LNG facility in Whately for peaking purposes.
Okay.
That's how important that was to us. In terms of siting the larger facility, that is one of the options that Concentric developed. That was in the 120 to 120 million dollar range pricing wise. It is not likely. I think their hope was that from an operational standpoint, that would have to be sited in northern Franklin County. Not likely we would be able to site it in Deerfield. Deerfield was one of the communities where we originally intended to site the facility that we built in Whately. And the town of Deerfield made it very clear that they were not interested in hosting an LNG facility. So we had to go shopping for another community, and we were able to come to terms with the folks in Whately. So again, it's I don't know that rail and all that options certainly would be explored, but I suspect as much of the Concentric study, if not all of it, that I can make available to you. And I think I probably will try to reach out to the DPU. I think the DPU has a docket on this.
Okay.
That would open up worlds of information to you, and those dockets are typically available online. All publicly available information. And I think that might answer an awful lot of your questions.
Sure.
And I might encourage you to explore that fully, before we go too much deeper in specific questions.
Okay. Yeah. So these other questions aren't too specific, but I'll just try to get through them as quickly as possible. Okay. Because I know we all want to eat dinner. So that led to my next question. As major businesses and large gas consumers leave the area, how is this data being tracked? For instance, and you just said you don't control Northampton, but this is just an example, right? Coca-Cola is going to be shutting down their facility in Northampton, which draws gas. How are the gas loads redistributed to new consumers during a moratorium? So if you have
that's a fair question. And I think initially we had hoped that maybe we would see some abandonment of load or some change of the load pattern, and that at some point we might be able to remarket those volumes. Unfortunately, we have not seen that.
Okay.
We haven't seen the type of outward migration of businesses in our Eastern Division. And in fact, the situation has even become more constrained during the pandemic because businesses obviously have not shut down, so they continue to consume load. But folks migrating to work at home have greatly increased residential demand and the changes in the residential load profile. So we're seeing much greater demand on the system than we even saw pre-pandemic, which also puts greater demands on our LNG facility, which is a very costly secondary source. So yeah, we haven't seen that kind of outward migration of businesses, and the residential load shift is just increasing demand.
Okay, but if you did for some reason see that, how would you reallocate the gas, right? So would it just be like pull a number and hope you get it, or how would that go forward in the future?
If we ever got to that standpoint, that we would have to turn over to the lawyers, because as you might imagine, a plan for that type of availability and redistribution would be a minefield of legal liability and lawsuits. So
absolutely.
Were we ever to find ourselves in that situation, that's something that would be governed by the lawyers.
Okay. Well, I tried to write my questions so they all kind of laid into each other, so they all had retrospect to each other. So then the next one was, as more users are switching to alternative options such as geothermal heat, electrification, which is solar, you probably know what electrification is, RNG-based fuels or hydrogen-based fuels, gas demand will continue to lower. Also, more homes and businesses have switched to more energy-efficient devices through the Mass Save program and better winterization of homes and more stringent stretch code requirements for new houses, right? So this has been ongoing for many years since the moratorium was enacted. What has happened to the excess gas as demand lowered? Has demand lowered due to these activities?
Yeah, no, you know what? I don't think any of those activities have taken hold to the point where we've seen any type of a reduction in demand. Otherwise, we wouldn't having to be run our run our LNG facility the way we are. You know, as I said, the substantial expansion in the residential load profile because of the pandemic is something that we don't expect is probably going to change much as we come to understand that the work patterns in America may continue to support work from home. But be that neither here nor there. I think a lot of what you're talking about, you know, I don't know that there's any significant geothermal in the area or there's any significant hydrogen in the area. Certainly, we're exploring renewable natural gas, but we're in the very early stages of that, as are most Northeast natural gas utilities. And we'll look at those types of options and opportunities to see if they become viable. And if in fact they do, you know, I think then we would have an opportunity to revisit some of these things. But I don't think we're seeing any opportunity, any near-term opportunities necessarily associated with any of that.
Can I ask a dumb question? The facility on Meade Street, what are those tanks? Are those liquid natural gas tanks?
No, that's another peaking facility that we have to use to support the gas system during periods of peak demand. Those are propane. That's a propane air facility.
Okay.
That we actually inject into the natural gas system. So yeah, we have maximized all peaking potential through those two facilities.
Okay, great. I'm on my last question, I promise. But you know, I think these are the answers we're kind of looking to at least hear and absorb, because you know all these years we've been told it's just a moratorium, right? So there was really no backup behind it. So you kind of touched on this in your last comment, and I'm glad that I hear you talking about it because it is kind of an up and coming thing. I have done a lot of these projects in Vermont for electrification, not so much supplementing gas lines. So the next question was, in Greenfield, we have a closed landfill producing methane and a wastewater treatment plant producing methane as a byproduct. As you know, your gas supplier, the largest component of natural gas is methane. Would it be possible to build an RNG site at the landfill or a wastewater treatment plant that we could inject this clean renewable gas into the pipeline to provide additional flow, right? So you said you were touching base, but I'll let you answer the question.
Yeah, I mean, we really are in the early stages of assessing renewable natural gas. You know, it is so hard, and again, I can't speak authoritatively because I don't have a lot of experience with it myself. But you know, you have to have a location that actually will interface with a distribution system at a point that operationally makes sense. You need to have a reliable source of supply and at certain pressures. I mean, there are a lot of unique variables that go with a facility like that. But there's so much opposition to natural gas in Massachusetts today, and you know, many interests and organizations that would love to see us go out of business sooner rather than later, and many of them at the same time are also opposing renewable natural gas, hydrogen, and any of the other alternatives. So in that respect, you know, those are some of the challenges we face, but be that neither here nor there, those are our problems, not yours. We are exploring the options of RNG and hydrogen, and to see if operationally it makes sense on a cost-effective basis for our distribution system.
Okay, so those are kind of up and coming strategies to maybe resolve the moratorium that you're still kind of diving into. In regards to that research, do you have like an estimated time, or next 2 years you kind of have all the research done? You know, I like to put timelines to things because it has accountability behind it, right? So, you know, it makes me go, okay, in 2 years I could ask them how they're doing on their RNG, right? So and if you don't know the answer, that's fine.
Yeah, I honestly don't know the answer.
Okay.
You know, the whole RNG industry is in its infancy in the United States. So you're asking questions that clearly I don't have the answer to, and I'm not sure that many people do.
Okay.
To the extent that, you know, I acknowledged previously that we're a for-profit company, and to the extent that will aid us in earning additional revenues and thereby profit, obviously there's no more motivating factor for a business than the profit motive. So you can be sure that if there is opportunity, it is opportunity that we're pursuing as quickly as possible, we just can't afford to take any of these options and put them on the shelf. That doesn't serve anybody.
Okay.
Those are your questions, Derek?
Those were all the questions.
Okay.
And I'd like to say for going off the fly here, did a pretty good job.
Thanks, Counselor.
You
So
don't have to flatter the guys. It's not part of the job.
No, but as somebody that's used to having to do that for a living, he did a really good job. So
that's all right. I worked in Congress for 7 years, so I'm not.
Here we go.
I'm not familiar with these types of things.
Not his first rodeo.
But let me
Councilman-
just
Go ahead.
recap if I can, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
The Councilor Healy is interested in the promises I've made to him. Number one, I absolutely promised to get you the DPU docket file. I'm certain there is one. If they're not, then I'll let you know that. But I will get you that information so that you can immediately access that and delve into it. I will talk with legal tomorrow and see if I can make the Concentric Study available to you. Again, it is my hope that I can, and I don't see any reason why I can't. But I wasn't intimately involved in that process, so I don't know what proprietary data may or may not be in there. And then thirdly, you're interested in load demand over the last several years, over the last 4 or 5 years in the Franklin County Greenfield area. So as I understand it, those are the three things you're looking for from us at this point.
That's correct.
Can I add a fourth? Do you have any data about how many people have asked for gas and been rejected?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that off the top of my head. We were maintaining a list up until 2018 when we determined that the moratorium was going to have to be permanent. And at that point, and this is not just Greenfield, this is the whole Amherst to Greenfield leg that we serve. We had received inquiries from 300 people who were interested in the 4 years from 2014 to 2018.
That's helpful. Councilor DeSorer, you have your hand up.
Yes, I can say I personally know of people even with disabilities that were looking for relief on the moratorium for something that would help motorize a wheelchair. And Berkshire Gas was not able to do that. But my question actually was for Director Collins, who's here, and I didn't actually think to ask this of her ahead of time, but where these folks who are speaking are representatives of Berkshire Gas, I just wanted to ask Director Collins, if I may, a question. Would you be okay with that, Councilor Elmer?
Yes.
Okay. So, Director Collins, are you aware of any other municipalities that have had better luck than we have, or do you have any suggestions? And I don't mean to put you on the spot. I'm sorry for asking you this off the cuff, but do you have any suggestions of what we as a city might be able to do? Does anyone ever have any luck switching, right into the DPU? I would like to say I love the responses that Mayor Rita Gartner wrote to Berkshire Gas. I thought they were spot on. But do you, as the person who's the head of this energy department, have any suggestions for us or any thoughts of what we might do?
Well, thank you for the question. I would say that that's not exactly the way I've framed it. I don't believe there really is. I mean, from what I've read, as Chris Farrell has explained, there's no way around this that I've been able to find out, and it's the same everywhere that the moratorium still holds. So what I focus my efforts on is the fabulous alternatives that Councilor Healy mentioned some of, but one that he didn't mention, which has really taken hold, is a great alternative and is being used quite a lot, are air source heat pumps, or they're also called mini splits. And that's an electric heating and cooling system that has come a long way to be the main and only heating system in buildings, and is, as of 2022, we have amazing incentives. And so it's a great time to electrify our buildings, and there are options. And I'm, one of the reasons I attended is to offer up this information. And I do talk to businesses that are coming to Greenfield and looking to get their buildings ready. There are resources. And so we work within the confines. And I would say that electrification is what it's called, going to all electric systems. It's here, it's now, it's affordable. There's over 7 million square feet of net zero buildings in Massachusetts alone that do not cost any more than a code compliant building. So I kind of think the argument, sorry, Chris and Gabe, but fossil fuels are they're over. We have other alternatives. And in terms of the renewable natural gas, we have looked into anaerobic digestion at our wastewater treatment facility. It is highly complicated. And, that's something I think locally produced energy is really a tack to look at for the future. But so I guess I in the work I do, we get bad news all the time, but what we have to do is find the good solutions and make them happen. And so that's what I try to focus on. And I welcome, if anyone has questions or building a house, trying to be energy efficient, running up against issues with not having access to gas, I can do what I can to help.
Can I follow up?
The answer you wanted, right?
That was great. That was spot on, Director.
And it was an advertisement for the competition. Very interesting.
Yes.
It's an ad for the Sun. No, just kidding.
I want you to know we still love you, Carol.
Oh, thank you.
Could I follow up, Councilor Elmer?
Please do.
So I remember going into your office and you telling me about, and I know I'm going to misspeak on this, so just forgive me, but I remember you talking about the electrical rate that the city had for all of its buildings. And I'm not going to get the numbers right, but just say it was like 2 cents on the whatever. And that, those of us who signed up for Eversource through, well, there was a different rate for citizens that signed up. Do you think that maybe there would be something that we could do as a council to give a discounted rate for, would there be any legislation that we could do that would give a discounted rate on that electricity for, say, a business that wanted to come to town? Because I think this is the Economic Development Committee.
Mhm.
This is just so hampering the development of business here. As we've said, it is absolutely ridiculous. Restaurants that can't go in, would there be, to your knowledge, would there be anything that we could do that would allow them to take advantage of the supply at a discounted rate so that they could open up? I don't know actually how all of the citizens would feel about that, but just a thought.
That's a great one. And I think that is actually how it's kind of working, although maybe, a little differently. But I can make a little pitch right now for, I believe you're talking about our Greenfield Light and Power, which is the municipal aggregation we have for all of our Greenfield electricity customers. They can opt in or opt out, but currently our rate is 9.879 cents for residential or commercial, and Eversource is like 13.702. We go to the hundredths, thousandths place. But it's 100% green electricity. So we're close to 30% lower than the winter rate for Eversource, still providing 100% renewable electricity to the whole community, which is having an impact. And so in that way, that's a kind of a discount over the basic service rate. But the programs that we have for energy efficiency are how we can pass on further savings to consumers or commercial business owners. And that is a facet of one of the reasons initially that we pursued municipal aggregation, was to make it more of an economic development tool to appeal to new businesses. that is a lot more complicated. And by the way, if you get that docket information, good luck with it. It's, I think it'd be easier to learn Chinese. Their stuff is no fun, but the BPU is the ones in control of making any of these changes. And there's a lot of really smart people all across the state working on different ways to kind of make inroads so that we can make things work better for our communities when it comes to, energy.
But 9.78, that is not the rate that the city pays to heat their own, for electricity for their own buildings, though. Am I misremembering this?
No, we're on it too, and everybody is it's actually 9.879.
Okay.
I know everyone's riveted. Sorry.
No. Oh, I love numbers. Perfect. Thank you so much.
I know you've told us this before, but Carol, just remind us, how would we sign up for Berkshire Power and Gas?
So glad you asked, Counselor Elmer. You can go search Greenfield Light and Power, and up will come a page, and about halfway down it there'll be a link on how to enroll. All the rate information is there. There's frequently asked questions. There's hopefully everything you would want to know. But if you need to, you can always call my office or email me. Email's probably a little bit better, so then I can send you the link or any information.
Terrific.
And I don't know if I should give my email. I don't know.
It's better protect your privacy. Derek, you have another question?
Yeah, I just like to respond to electric heat and electrification. So, the grid itself, when you become grid dependent on electricity, and it gets a peak demand, right? So a lot of these grids reach peak demand in the summer months. You see this problem out in California, right?
Yeah.
Where they have blackouts, right? Because there's not enough power. So we got to be very careful there, right? You get too many large consumers eating up power, you're going to cause problems with the grid. So, and I do this for a living, right? So I do fuel cells, solar. I deal with this all the time. So the problem is it's a double-edged sword, right? You can't just say no more natural gas and then the grid fails, right? So it's really working with both parties to come up with the most viable solution to resolve the issues we have. And the issue we have now is definitely industry that would use a process-related gas for some sort of, whether it's a bakery, like New England Natural Bakers wanted to move to Deerfield, right, for example, and they couldn't because they couldn't get the gas, right? So it becomes an issue with the process more in the industrial world than it does the heating and cooling. So I just want to make, from an economic development standpoint, that's where I'm getting at here. There's just not a lot of alternatives to processed gas.
And if I could just chime in on that, Councilor Hurley, this is Chris Farrell, and you're absolutely right. There are certain applications that gas is ideal for that competing fuels don't necessarily address. But I look forward to working with you. I think we should have conversations offline. I could probably be even more helpful. I'm excited that you're interested, simply because, the last conversation when our former President Karen Zink and I sat down with Jay Ash, who was the Secretary of Economic Development for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we laid the Concentric report out to him and said, we need $100 million to do anything. What can the state help us out with?
Mm-hmm.
And Jay Ash said to us, you know what? He said, my whole budget's $100 million. He said, but that's not the important part. He says, the important part is I'm in Franklin and Hampshire County all the time, and no one is telling me that the lack of availability of natural gas is hampering them in any way.
Okay.
So we heard this from the Secretary of Economic Development, which obviously was discouraging. But I'm excited by your interest, and I'm happy to have continuing discussions with you about it.
Yeah, and I guess if the another leading question here, and I apologize for dragging this out, but this has been on my mind for a long time, right? So, if for some reason we ever did gain interest from a business in the Greenfield Industrial Park that wanted gas, would there be an option of doing some sort of LNG plant for them? That it'd be like a PPA almost, power purchase agreement, but a smaller scale LNG plant for that one facility? Or for
Actually,
that industrial park?
there would be nothing stopping that one facility per se of running their own LNG plant.
Okay.
You
All right.
you don't have to be a utility to run LNG. We have a large printing concern over in the Pittsfield area,
Mhm.
and they have 200,000 gallons of propane because they were too far from the gas distribution system to make it worthwhile for them to connect.
Okay.
So they run their operation off of propane. So yeah, those types of satellite facilities can exist without a utility, and a lot of businesses look at them.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much.
Okay, have we exhausted all the questions on this one?
Well, I could go on all night, but everybody will hate me by the end of the day.
We can add it for an hour. If we can, I'm gonna open the door for new business.
Mhm.
Any old business?
I'd just like to thank Councilor Healy for bringing this topic up because this really does hamper business in Greenfield. And how wonderful for a new counselor to bring up this topic. So I would like to thank you very much for doing that. bringing it
Absolutely.
before. That was very well thought out and much needed discussion.
And Counselor,
Yeah, I
please
learned a
share
lot.
those thoughts with your state legislative delegation too. Let them know that you think there's a need for natural gas.
Oh, I will.
Okay,
And the question was actually, in my mind for a long time from the business, but one of the constituents, Vic, actually, who didn't have a chance to speak, he was the one that emailed me about it. And I thank him for taking the time to send me an email.
okay. No old business? Okay, then I'm gonna just go to reading the agenda stuff here. The next meeting we have is a joint meeting with the planning board on February 17th at 6 p.m. via WebEx. This is to talk about some changes in the zoning rules governing signage. Am I right about that, Councilor Disorder?
Yes, that will be a joint public hearing.
Okay.
With,
And there's some detailed stuff to read ahead of time to get up to speed on. This is coming from the planning board, I believe, but it goes through us. Okay, I feel like it's time to entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make that motion.
Do we have a second?
Second disorder.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. Okay. Before we leave, Councilor Bullock, each of us introduced ourselves during the roll call by describing ourselves in 2 words. The example, like I said, I was an ex-journalist. Who are you?
Oh man, I'm caught off guard here. Let's see. Describe myself in 2 words. I would say that I am collaborative, and I would say that I am thoughtful.
Okay, a different approach. Most people just gave their professions. All right, thank
Profession. Oh, you're an ex-journalist by profession.
yes.
Well, if
Okay,
you want to know what I do for work, I can tell you that too.
go ahead.
I work for a national nonprofit on guaranteed income. So I work with government in government adoption and with philanthropists to invest in research to show that guaranteed income is what's needed to lift families out of poverty.
Great, thank you
I
very
also
much.
I work per diem at the hospital as well.
All right, you've gone way over your 2 words.
Sorry.
We'll see you on the 17th. Thank you very much. Bye-bye. And thanks to our guests.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Counselor.
Councilor Disorder, do I have to do something with this recording?
Yeah, just wait. You wait now, and we're all going to log off. Be the last person to log off, okay?
Okay, and then what?
All right. And then just push the X after we're all gone. Okay?
Okay, and then it automatically gets recorded somewhere?
Sure. Just be the last person. Make sure everybody's gone. That's what I do. Okay?
All right.
All right. Thank you so much.
Good to see you. Bye-bye. Don and Jaden, can I ask you to leave the meeting so I can close it?